Welcome to Podkey Wellness, where discipline, movement, and connection shape how well we live. A lot of wellness advice falls apart. The second motivation disappears. The stronger idea running through today's stories is much simpler. Build systems, preserve energy, and make life easier for your future self before you desperately need that help. One of the clearest themes here is that motivation is nice, but it's unreliable, and discipline is what keeps the lights on. The goal is to make the basics almost robotic. Wake up, train, work, handle your responsibilities, and do it whether you feel inspired or not. That can sound a little severe at first, but the upside is freedom. When habits are steady over 2, 3, 5 years, they start compounding like investments, and that gives you more control over your outcomes instead of living at the mercy of your mood. It also matters later in life, because routine helps preserve purpose across big transitions, especially retirement, when a lot of people suddenly lose the structure that used to carry the day. On exercise, there's a useful distinction between long, easy cardio and short, hard efforts. A fast 10 to 15-minute anaerobic session on a bike, a rower, or with kettlebells can give a very immediate lift in energy and mental sharpness. It's the kind of workout that might leave you breathing hard, but also weirdly more awake and switched on afterward. There's also a bigger point here. Even if a workout feels exhausting in the moment, regular movement tends to raise your baseline energy over time. That matters because one of the biggest threats to independence as we age is the slow creep of fatigue, weakness, and friction in everyday life. The Detachment's aging suit gets at this in a very physical way by simulating loss of muscle and increased friction, so simple tasks feel heavier and more awkward. That's a pretty vivid reminder that preserving strength and mobility isn't about chasing athletic glory. It's about keeping ordinary life from becoming unnecessarily hard. Another practical thread is what to do when something goes wrong. The advice is blunt and helpful. Take immediate concrete action. It doesn't have to be the perfect move. A small step still interrupts the negative feedback loop, gets you out of pure reaction, and creates momentum toward a solution. That same proactive mindset shows up in aging and caregiving too. Instead of vaguely assuming things will work themselves out, use tools like the AARP Livability Index or the MIT Longevity Preparedness Index to think through housing, finances, support, transportation, and routine. And then have the conversations people tend to avoid. Who will provide care? Where that care would happen? And how decisions would actually get made. Caregiving scores, especially low in preparedness research, around 42 out of 100, which is not exactly comforting. Only about 30% of families have explicit caregiving conversations, even though a third are already putting in something like 25 to 29 hours a week of care. The leadership material here is less about charisma and more about emotional ballast. A good leader acts as a counterweight to the group, cooling down arrogance after a win and lifting morale after a loss, so the team stays cohesive and makes better decisions. Resilience to failure becomes a kind of filter. People who can't recover from losses often just leave, while stronger leaders study the gap, reset, and direct action. That same idea applies at home too, because parenting is its own form of leadership. You acknowledge achievements, you celebrate a little, and you still enforce limits. A few slices of pizza after a win, sure. Turning every small success into a festival probably doesn't help anyone. The healthiest version is brief reinforcement followed by a gentle return to purpose. Good job. Enjoy it. Now what's next? There's also a surprisingly physical approach to better decisions under pressure. If a moment gets heated or high stakes, create distance with your body first. Push your chair back, step away from the table, breathe, raise your chin, lower your hands. Those small embodied cues can help widen your perspective and break the tunnel vision that takes over in conflict or stress. That kind of detachment isn't about checking out. It's about seeing more clearly, so you can make the call other people are missing. The social side of wellness gets a lot of weight here. and honestly, it should. One suggestion is to think of friendships like a diversified portfolio and maintain at least 2 or 3 close contacts, because social ties naturally thin out with age, moves, caregiving demands, and family changes. That's not just emotionally nice to have. Loneliness carries serious health risks, with research comparing social isolation to smoking 11 to 15 cigarettes a day and linking it to depression, hypertension, and higher mortality. There's also a gendered reality in caregiving, where the burden often falls on women, especially older daughters. So if a family keeps postponing the practical conversation, what usually happens is that the work still arrives, just in a more stressful and less fair form. The built environment matters more than people realize. Small design choices can reduce friction every single day. Single floor layouts, accessible toilets, intuitive tech, simpler thresholds, fewer little hazards that become big hazards after one bad fall. That helps older adults, and it also helps caregivers who are otherwise working around the house instead of with it. Where you live matters on an even larger scale too. Adjacent zip codes can differ by 9 to 13 years in average lifespan, which is a wild reminder that access to transportation, services, and daily amenities isn't just convenience, it shapes independence. And when falls do happen, especially hip fractures, the health consequences can escalate fast, including serious 1-year mortality risk. So reducing those barriers early really matters. There's a thoughtful framing device in the mix here. Think in 8,000-day chunks. Roughly speaking, that gives you youth from 0 to 21, midlife from 21 to 46, retirement from 46 to 65, and senior years from 65 on. It's a simple way to see that retirement now can occupy about 1/3 of adult life, which means it can't just be imagined as an endless vacation with better snacks. You need practical and purposeful plans. Questions like, what will you do on a Tuesday at 10:30? How will you get an ice cream cone? And who will change your light bulb sound almost silly until you realize they're really asking about structure, mobility, and support. Underneath all of this is identity. The source material points to things like hardcore music, DIY culture, rituals, training, and disciplined practice as forces that shape a person into someone who questions assumptions and sticks with hard things. That matters, because long-term wellness usually isn't held together by information alone. It's held together by who you believe yourself to be. One last practical note is around meal timing. For some people, delaying food until after physical activity can make them feel quicker and mentally clearer, especially if a lighter stomach helps during demanding work or training. That's not a universal rule, but it fits the broader idea of designing routines around how you actually perform best, physically and cognitively. That's the thread through all of this. Make good choices easier, make hard moments steadier, and give your future self fewer obstacles to fight through. Thanks for spending time with Podkey Wellness. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.